From UltimateGuitar.com, Alice Cooper, now you're making an album for your fans. We're not doing it for the money. We made a lot of money back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Hard rock legend and one of the most down-to-earth musicians in the business, Alice Cooper, explained that he and his contemporaries are no longer making new music for any potential financial gain, but for their fans. While speaking to the Heavy magazine in a recent interview, Cooper touched upon this after being asked to weigh in. Is it becoming easier or harder to make new albums at this point? He replied, and this is transcribed by Ultimate Guitar, "Well, I'm always going to do classic Alice albums, which is a thematic album that tells one big story. But every song tells a story of its own. And you put them all together and they tell the big story." And as Alice also adds, he has no intention of just doing a single and sharing it via the usual streaming services. Instead, he's all about the albums. "I've done that since the very beginning. I don't think I'll ever write just for, like, here's a single for Spotify, here's the single for this. I just can't do that. It's the same thing with Aerosmith, same thing with Guns N' Roses. These bands, they make albums because there's fans out there that want to hear new music. At this point, we're not doing it for the money. We made a lot of money back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, so now you're making an album for your fans." Up next, the interviewer asked Alice why he's still making new albums if he can still just play the live shows and use any material he wants from his massive catalog, and Cooper replied, "I heard them ask the same thing of Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan says, I write songs besides the record songs, and I play songs for the audience. That's what I do. He does 200 shows a year, Bob Dylan." I thought about that, and I said, "That's exactly what I want to do." I said, "I can't think of anything I would rather do than that." People say, "Well, why don't you retire?" And I go, "Why? I'm at the top of my game right now." Compared to many other legendary artists in hard rock and old school metal, Alice Cooper keeps pushing out albums every few years. If we count both the Alice Cooper Band from back in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, and Alice Cooper as a solo artist, we add up to 28 records. And now Alice is preparing his 29th album, titled Road. That's planned to come out sometime this year. This will be his 8th studio record in the 21st century. And knowing that he's well into his 70s, this is nothing short of impressive.